As it's midsummer and we're out in the garden more, sometimes we find unexpected visitors in our garden, and Mark Turner is here to tell us a little bit about some of those not so friendly visitors, snakes, that we might find in our garden.
That's right. So there's a lot of snakes that are out and about this time of year, and certainly it's not uncommon for folks to encounter them, but the important thing is to remember that most snakes that we have here in the state are actually non-venomous.
Okay.
And you might notice I said venomous and not poisonous. Venom is something where if the snake bites you, it's going to cause problems, whereas poison would be if you ate the snake, it would cause a problem. Okay. So obviously, unless you're out there eating snakes, we talk about snakes being venomous or non-venomous, and out of the almost 50 species of snakes that we have here in Oklahoma, only 7 of them are actually venomous.
Okay.
That would be 5 rattlesnakes, and we also have copperheads and cottonmouths. Most snakes that you're going to find, both in the garden or even out in the woods or out in the grassland, are just going to be non-venomous snakes, but you do need to pay attention because obviously
they can all bite though, right?
That's right. They can all bite, and so that's why whether it's venomous or non-venomous, we tell people, for the most part, just leave snakes alone.
Okay.
If more people get injured trying to move or kill, especially a venomous snake, than they do, just happening upon them, because again, you're trying to get that snake out of a spot and suddenly it turns around and bites you. That's either not going to feel good or, could be dangerous if it's a venomous one. So, we tell people just leave snakes alone. They're out there. They actually can be helping you with some of your landscape, depending on what you want. But most people have problems with mice around their house or in their gardens. And so snakes can be important for rodent control. And some species of non-venomous snakes, like king snakes, actually can help reduce the number of venomous snakes you might have, because they'll actually kill and eat them. So by leaving those non-venomous snakes alone, you're actually probably helping yourself both with pest control and with potentially, helping control some venomous snakes as well.
Okay, and I know we have snakes all across the state, right?
Yeah.
And so there are some territories for some of those different rattlesnakes. And
yep, so there's different places that where different ones live. And so, but there are venomous species that are present across the state, as well as non-venomous ones.
Okay, so what sort of is the environment? Is there an environment that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so in general, obviously different snakes live in different places, but when thinking about snakes around your home and potentially trying to reduce them, keeping grass mowed, especially in places that you're frequently going, such as either your garden or in your lawn, keeping things relatively clean, not having a bunch of brush piles. Okay. Several snake species can live in brush piles. And so thinking about just trying to keep things relatively clean in places that you're frequently going, that's really the most effective way to reduce the risk of having really any snakes, but also, especially venomous snakes. Certainly it's not uncommon though. I get sent pictures all the time of especially rat snakes. There's a couple species of rat snakes in Oklahoma. They're relatively common, and some of them, might look a little bit like several venomous species, even though they're a non-venomous snake. And so, folks commonly see them and get worried about them.
So they're not all black, right?
That's right. That's right. Correct. So they vary in color based on the age of the snake as well as the species. But in general, rat snakes tend to range from black to brown. They can have some patterns on them. Okay. The juveniles of some species will be gray with some darker patterning and checkering on their back. So they all look a little bit different, but the key thing to look at if you're thinking about whether a snake's venomous or not is the head shape. Now you can look at the eyes actually.
No, thank you.
Yeah, most people are not going to get close enough, but if you do have a picture of it or zoom in with your camera, for non-venomous snakes, they're going to have round pupils, whereas the venomous species are going to have more slit-shaped pupils.
Okay.
But you can just look at the head.
Okay.
Generally, the venomous snakes are going to have, at least the ones we have here in Oklahoma, are going to have more of a triangular shaped head, whereas non-venomous species are going to have a rounder shape to their head, and they're not going to have that, triangular flat shape. Now, there are some species that actually will try to mimic venomous snakes. For example, several species of snakes will actually rattle their tail to act like a rattlesnake. So, take a close, if you hear rattling, obviously step away from it, but it might not be a rattlesnake. It could also just be another snake that's trying to mimic one that's venomous. Okay. But in general, if you see that flat head shape, I would definitely stay, triangular head shape, definitely stay away from that. Whereas if it's more of a cylinder, more of a rounder head, it's probably not one that you want to worry about. But again, there's no harm in just staying away from it and steering
So
clear.
leave it alone because it's either good or it's venomous, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Well, going back to some of the characteristics of it, I've heard a little bit about, whether it's the water moccasins versus just a water snake or something, that the whole body is above the water or just the head. Is there anything to that?
There can be trends with regards to the way that a snake might swim, but in general, I steer clear of that.
Okay.
If you see a snake in the water, most likely it's probably
Going away from you.
well, it's probably not a moccasin, but most of the time, again, just steer clear of it. I definitely don't try to follow hard and fast rules with regards to the way a snake's swimming or anything like that. If it is in the water, and luckily we only have cottonmouths in the eastern portion of the state. Generally, they're associated with more swampy areas or wetter areas.
Okay.
The rest of the state, if you see a snake in the water, it's most likely not a cottonmouth because they're not present in especially the western part of the state.
And I ask that because of water gardens, right? A lot of homeowners have water gardens, and
That's
they can
right.
find those snakes when they're, either getting ready to put it back to bed for the winter or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly right. And that's why, the number one thing to avoid having problems with snakes is just watch where you're putting your hands, which is a good rule of thumb anyway. And, just be careful if you're in either clearing a brush pile out or have your hands in dense vegetation. Those are the types of places that snakes tend to hang out. Most of the time, nearly always, the snake is more scared of you than you are of it.
Yeah.
Even though it may not feel like it. And so, just being careful where you place your hands is a great way to just avoid having any problems.
Okay, so get some good garden gloves too.
That's right. That's
All
right.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing this with us today.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.